1 Samuel chapter 27 opens with David in a desperate situation. King Saul, consumed by jealousy and paranoia, relentlessly pursues David. David, anointed by God to be the next king of Israel, faces an impossible choice. He cannot raise his hand against Saul, the Lord's anointed, yet remaining in Israel means certain death. David's heart is heavy with anguish. He recognizes the impossible position he is in. The weight of his destiny clashes with the present danger. His heart yearns for a solution, for a place of refuge where he can catch his breath and seek God's guidance. In this desperate hour, David makes a momentous decision. He chooses to leave Israel, the land of God's promise, and seek refuge in the land of the Philistines, Israel's sworn enemies. This decision reveals the depth of David's despair and the severity of Saul's persecution. It is a decision born of desperation, a gamble for survival. David, the future king of Israel, becomes a fugitive in the land of his enemies. This act of fleeing, of seeking refuge in an unexpected place, will have profound implications for David's journey and foreshadow the ministry of Jesus centuries later. David's choice of refuge is significant. He flees to Gath, the very city of Goliath, the giant whom David had defeated years earlier. This choice is not accidental. It is a deliberate act, a calculated risk that highlights David's cunning and his understanding of the Philistine political landscape. David knows that the Philistines are a divided people with various city-states often at odds with each other. He seeks out Achish, the king of Gath, hoping to find favor in his eyes. David presents himself not as a threat, but as a valuable asset, a warrior who can strengthen Achish's position. Achish, impressed by David's reputation and charisma, welcomes him. David, accompanied by his loyal band of warriors and their families, finds himself living among the Philistines. He walks a tightrope, carefully navigating the complexities of Philistine society while maintaining his faith in the God of Israel. This act of dwelling among his enemies, of finding temporary refuge in a foreign land, foreshadows Jesus, who would later embrace the outcasts and sinners, those considered enemies of God, offering them forgiveness and a place in his kingdom. Achish grants David a small city named Ziklag as a base of operations. This seemingly insignificant act has profound implications for David and for the future of Israel. Ziklag, located on the border between Philistia and Judah, becomes a strategic outpost, a bridge between two worlds. David uses Ziklag as a base from which to raid the Geshurites, the Girzites, and the Amalekites, ancient enemies of Israel. He carefully maintains the appearance of loyalty to Achish, sending him a portion of the spoils of war while concealing his true allegiance to Israel. Ziklag, though technically Philistine territory, becomes a place where David can rebuild his forces, train his men, and prepare for the day when he will return to Israel as king. It is a place of preparation, a crucible where David's leadership is tested and refined. This theme of a temporary dwelling, a place of preparation for a greater purpose, finds its ultimate fulfillment in Jesus, who lived among us for a time, preparing the way for his kingdom and teaching his disciples the ways of God. As time passes, David's position becomes increasingly complex. He gains the trust of Achish, who sees him as a loyal vassal. Yet, David's heart remains true to Israel and to the God of his fathers. He plays a dangerous game, walking a tightrope between two worlds, two loyalties. This internal conflict, this struggle between two loyalties, foreshadows the experience of Jesus, who lived in the world but was not of the world, who loved his own people but also came to save the Gentiles, who ultimately remained faithful to his Father's will even when it led to the cross. Throughout 1 Samuel 27, we see glimpses of Jesus in the actions and experiences of David. David's flight to Gath mirrors Jesus' flight to Egypt as a child, both fleeing from the murderous rage of earthly kings. David's dwelling among the Philistines foreshadows Jesus' embrace of the outcasts and sinners, those considered enemies of God. Ziklag, the temporary dwelling place where David prepares for his kingship, points to Jesus, who lived among us, preparing the way for his kingdom. David's complex relationship with Achish, his struggle between two loyalties, reflects Jesus' own experience of living in the world, but not of the world, of loving his own people, but also coming to save the Gentiles. These foreshadowing elements remind us that Jesus is the fulfillment of the Old Testament hopes and promises. He's the true and greater David, the king who will reign forever, the one who will ultimately defeat all of God's enemies and establish his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. Are you ready for the next chapter? Just click here to go straight to it.